Hello, this is Faith at Faith and Books, and I thought I would continue with my bookshelf tour of the books that I inherited from my Aunt Jackie. And I wish I knew how to link. I'll put it in the description box below, the link to my other video if you're interested. I did this shelf, and I started to do this second shelf here. But I'm just going to continue pretty quickly because, as usual, I don't have that much time. Just talk about these books I inherited from her. And most of them are old books because she got them from her father, my grandfather, who tended to buy used books. So a lot of these books are end of the 1800s, early 1900s. So I think the last one that I ended with was this book, The British Working Class Movement, 1787 to 1947, right? And that had her signature in it. And when did it come out? It's a newer book, 1945. Okay, and then the next one is, I turned off the lights because I was trying to get good lighting. Better lighting. The other lighting looked really kind of harsh. Anyway, this is called Social Doctrine in Action, and it's by Reverend John A. Ryan. And he wrote a well-known book. This was published in 1947 on the living wage. He was a great social justice advocate back, I don't know, he was like early 1900s, I guess. So there's that. Let's see, the next one is by another well-known Jesuit priest. And this guy was very influential in Vatican II, in religious liberty and how Vatican II approaches that. And this book is We Hold These Truths, Catholic Reflections on the American Proposition by John Courtney Murray, S.J. That means he's a Jesuit. So that's the next one. So, of course, you can see we're really interested in the intersection of Catholicism and social justice issues and labor issues. And then this just happened to be my aunt's copy of Mythology by Edith Hamilton, which I started to read because I'm studying for that Latin exam and I need to know my mythology. And mythology is one of those things where I forget the references. It all sort of blurs into, one indistinguishable story. So I don't remember who was the goddess of what or exactly the names of. So I have to study up on that. Then this is a pretty interesting collection of pamphlets that are old. They were put out by the union. So this is what a union did for the coal miners. It's a Brookwood labor pamphlets. So when were these? These are like I have to use the light of the phone in order to look up how old these are. This was put out in 1931. So this is by a Catherine Pollock. But what's neat about this, let's see, here's another one by Catherine Pollock, Our Labor Movement Today. And what's neat to me, anyway, about these pamphlets is that you can see Ethelyn Christensen is the person who somehow gave these to my aunt. Maybe she inherited it from Ethelyn Christensen, but I don't really know who Ethelyn Christensen is, except that when I was a little girl, we would get gifts from her occasionally, and sometimes she would come visit. And, like every once in a while, if my parents gave a party or something, this woman named Ethelyn Christensen would show up. So she must have been a friend of my father's family, who was also very involved in union work. Here's another one. Should the workers form a party of their own? And it's a debate. One guy says yes, the other guy says no. When did this come out? 1932. So there's another pamphlet. Oh, there's my grandfather clock. This is report of the first American rank-and-file labor delegation to Soviet Russia. So my grandfather did make a trip to the Soviet Union and meet Stalin, actually, to talk about labor issues. Though he later got my grandfather got kind of shut out because he wasn't a communist. He was a very faithful Catholic, and communism and Catholicism doesn't quite mix. So this was 1928, is that one. Now let's see. You and Your Union. This is the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. Maybe that's what Ethel Christensen was involved with. I don't know. Here's Machinery and Social Progress. That's another one. Who wrote this? Now, some of these my grandfather actually wrote. So let's see if this was... No, that's not by him. So we're going to get to his. Here's another one. Why Bother About the Government? Important Union Methods. These are all by Catherine Pollock. How America Lives. League to Industrial Democracy. How to Conduct a Union Meeting. Here we go. That's the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. Property. The Fellowship of Reconciliation. By Kirby Page. Okay, Penn Central News. So that's where my grandfather lived. Altoona, March 11th, 1924. And this is by John Brophy. So that's my grandfather. Here's the Government of Coal. District number 2, United Mine Workers. That was my grandfather's. Yeah, John Brophy, president. You can see him there. Pennsylvania history. Did this? I think this just was an article of interest. Anyway, I'll show it to you. Why the Miners Program? I think this was also by my grandfather. Don't want these to fall down. The Special Function of Trade Unionism by Frank Tannenbaum. This one's 1947. In Non-Union Mines, The Diary of a Coal Digger by Powers Hapgood. Powers Hapgood was a friend of my grandfather's. That name's come up a lot when you're researching stuff he did. Why the Wagner Act Should Not Be Amended. The Congress of Industrial Organizations, that's the CIO. I think this was written. Nope, no it wasn't. Here we go. Labor in the United States by Sidney Hillman. General President, Clothing Workers of America, 1929. Pamphlet. Here we go. Report of John Brophy, District number 2, United Mine Workers of America. Here's another one. Report of John Brophy. Wait, that one was March 11, 1924. This one is March 1927. And then here we go. Facts. An address delivered before the Public Ownership League, Chicago, Illinois, 1921 by John Brophy. And then this last one, How to Run Coal, issued by the Nationalization Research Committee of the United Mine Workers of America. Yeah, 1922. There you go. All right, I'm not sure what this is. Oh, this is an article that my grandfather wrote for Commonweal, which is a Catholic magazine. I think it's the same magazine, October 8th, 1954. So that's pretty cool. So those are these old pamphlets that that my apparently Ethel Christensen, a friend of the family's, collected and then gave to my aunt. I'm not going to go through this stuff right here. Let me tilt this so you can see what I'm actually looking at. These are just photos and stuff, so I'm not going to go through that. But I'll come down here to these books, and I'll just I don't want to tilt my camera too much because it's a little delicate the way it's up there. I'm afraid it'll pop off and fall. So you can't really see the shelf that I'm pulling these books off of, but I'll just show them to you. I'll just bring them out and show them to you. This is called The Turbulent Years. It's by this guy, Irving Bernstein, which my Aunt Jackie cut this out and put, I guess it was the dust jacket, put in there. But this is crazy, but I think that this might have been the guy, I'm not sure, but my aunt never married. She was engaged to a guy, and I think it was this guy. And then he left her like weeks before the wedding. He called it off. She never recovered from it. She never married. She never talked about it. She saved all his letters, and right before she died, she destroyed them. But she never got over it, and so she was single all her life. But I think, I'm not sure because she hardly talked about it, but I think it was this guy. I think it might have been him. Anyway, so that book is interesting for that reason. The next book is called The Miners. Let's look. It looks like it was a gift to my grandfather that my aunt just saved, and I can't read the writing. Certain people gave it to him, Arthur somebody or another. I can't tell you who it was. Anyway, it's just a book about the history of the Miners' Federation of Great Britain, 1889, 1910. Sorry, you're looking at me. I don't have this angled well, sorry. Okay, The Road to Wigan Pier by George Orwell. I've actually read parts of this. Parts of it, it's really steeped in the politics of the time, but parts of it are really riveting. The thing I remember the most, though, is when they would build these miner towns. He was talking about this particular town that was horribly depressed. And they built these houses, like these row houses for the workers, but they didn't put any back doors on them. But you had, in order to use the outhouse, you had to go in the alley in the back. So you literally had to go out your front door to go to the bathroom and then walk up this long block of row houses and go around to the back and then find the outhouse. Like, who designs buildings like that? That's just cruel. Anyway, that's an interesting book. I wish I could say I read the whole thing, but I didn't. This is just The War on Labor and the Left, Understanding Americans' Unique Conservatism. This looks like a newer book, 1991. Yeah, so that's just a book my aunt got. This is so my great-great-grandfather on my mother's side was Samuel Gompers, and this is his memoirs or his autobiography. Yeah, autobiography. 70 Years in Labor, an autobiography by Samuel Gompers. There he is, the man himself. So I hate to say, but I've only read chunks of this. I haven't read the whole thing. Thing is, these labor leaders, they get really bogged down into what they're doing, and so it's just meeting after meeting and proposal after proposal and strike after strike, and it really kind of, you have to be really into the topic. Oh dear, oh my gosh, how did that get in there? A DVD just fell out. Anyway, there's another picture of him. I have no idea how that got in the book. Oh, that's really bizarre. All right, anyway, so this is a pretty cool book. All right. I have no idea how this thing. It's Harry Potter. I have no idea how it got in the book. That is so strange. That's so typical of things that happen to me. Just really bizarre things. Anyway, this is a collection of magazines from, when was this? I don't know, the 40s and 50s maybe? So my aunt was really into this woman who started an apostolate, which is like what is an apostolate? It's like a movement, a group of people within the Catholic Church who focus on a particular aspect or spirituality. And so this woman's name was Dorothy Doan. I actually have her book in another bookcase, a book by her. But she started this magazine, and my aunt was really into her at one time, 1940s, 1950s. So these are just, this is 1954. says Sex and the Single Woman. That was 1954 as well. So anyway, so she's got all these magazines that this little apostolate that she was into put out called Integrity. These are all from 1954. So I guess she just had those teenagers. It would be so interesting to read. I have all this stuff. I'm just sitting on this treasure trove that I haven't really, like I vaguely know about it, but I haven't ever delved into it. But look at that artwork from this magazine. Money, March 1954. Integrity. Anyway, that's pretty cool. I should go and read those. All right, the next one, this is a newer book. It's New Seeds of Contemplation by Thomas Merton. He's a famous Catholic convert. This is Society and Sanity by Frank Sheed. So Frank Sheed had a really popular English Catholic publishing company, Sheed and Ward. His wife was Maisie Ward. And my aunt and my grandfather and everybody were really into them. I've read he's excellent, Frank Sheed. I read his Theology and Sanity. So I need to read this one. I guess this is the follow-up. Ground Planned for Catholic Reading by Frank Sheed, F.J. Sheed. So he was this very popular publisher. We have many books that he published here. This one is Peter Maurin, Gay Believer. I don't think that's about his orientation, by Arthur Sheehan. So Peter Maurin was a friend of Dorothy Day's. You might have heard of Dorothy Day. She started the Catholic Worker Movement. And my grandfather was actually friends with her, knew her. We have like a newspaper article where she's talking about my grandfather. And she and Moran really were friends and kind of collaborators. And so this is a book about him. Then these next two books are really interesting to me. They're a New Testament commentary for English readers by Ronald A. Knox. So I think I've talked about Ronald A. Knox before. He was a popular mystery writer. He was a priest, but he was popular in England. He was a popular mystery writer, and he was actually some of his short stories were collected along with Dorothy L. Sayers and Agatha Christie and other mystery writers of that golden age. So he sort of traveled in those circles, but he was also a great linguist and biblical scholar. So he translated the Bible. I should collect all his books in one place. In fact, that's an organizational question I have for anybody who might be watching this and has hung on this long. Is how do you do that? Like, this is all books I inherited from my aunt, and then over there I have books that I inherited from my parents, and then in the study, in the other place, I have other books, but the same author will be in different places. I'm wondering, should I put them all together under? That makes more sense maybe than by how I inherited them, how I got them. Anyway, he was a biblical scholar, and so this is a 2-volume set of his commentary on the New Testament. I should read that for sure. He was brilliant. He was really interesting during the war, even though he's sort of this high scholar and he was sort of well known in mystery writer circles and that sort of thing. When World War II came along, and you know how they were shipping all the kids out of London to protect them, he wound up becoming like the rector or something of an all-girls boarding school. And so what he would do is he would teach on Sunday evenings. He would give these talks to them, and they've collected them in books. I actually read the one called, I don't think he called it this, I think the publisher did, The Creed in Slow Motion. And he's brilliant. He's this brilliant writer, and he's this celebrity mystery writer, and he gives these talks to these, like, girls were like 10, 11, that are so clear and he doesn't talk down to them, but it's still profound, and yet he can express everything so simply. He was a really versatile person. He was really, really talented. Anyway, I better wrap this up because it's getting too long. So, The Elements of Style, that's a classic, not very old. So my aunt loved poetry. Here we're starting to get into her poetry books. A Retreat with Gerard Manley Hopkins and Hildegard of Bingen, Turning Pain into Power. So this is just a little book to make you think about things using Hopkins and Hildegard of Bingen. This is The Poetry of Architecture. Can you see that? I don't know how well I'm showing things off. By John Ruskin. It's another one by John Ruskin. We saw some of his above. That's an old book too. I feel like it's getting too long, so I better hurry. All right, and then the next one is Memoirs of a Medieval Woman. This is new, The Life and Times of Marjorie Kemp. So that was something she bought later in life. Oh, here we go, Amo, Amasamat, and more. So my aunt studied both Latin and Greek, but her real love was French. She became fluent in French. I don't have any of her French books, though. So this is, and from her childhood, she really loved Winnie the Pooh and Wind in the Willows. So she saved these books, and someone gave her this, Winnie il Pooh. So it's Winnie the Pooh in Latin, which is kind of cool. Let's see, she had a complete collection of Flannery O'Connor stories. I've only read a few of her stories. I've got to really read more of her because I feel I'm really remiss in not knowing more about Flannery O'Connor. This is a book that I gave her like the year before she died. This is an incredible book. In fact, I'm gonna do Steve Donahue's vacation tag, and this is gonna be one of the books that I list. Let's see. This is just Seneca on the Shortness of Life. Life is long if you know how to use it. Penguin Books, Great Ideas. Can you see that? I don't know what that is. I mean, I assume it's some sayings of Seneca. This is her original. You can see her book plate of the Winnie the Pooh poetry. So that's, wait a second. And then this one. Oh, it's the same. Can you see that? This is another older version. When we were young. Winnie the Pooh. From when she was a little girl. She saved these books. What is this one? Renaissance and Other Poems by Edna St. Vincent Millay. This is an older book too. This is T.S. Eliot. She loved T.S. Eliot. T.S. Eliot, Collected Poems, 1909, 1935. And then she also loved this poet. This is a new modern poet, Derek Walcott. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. But she actually saw him. She went to readings he gave. She was really into him. So she has 3 of his collections of poetry. Let's see, she just happened to have a little Pelican Shakespeare, the sonnets. And let's see, the Odes of Horace. This is the bilingual edition, so it's in both Latin and English. And then this last book that I'm going to show you, oh, this is her old copy, 1908. No, 1933, The Wind in the Willows. There you go. So that's the last book on that shelf. So this is too long. I'm very, very sorry. And I hope that I actually showed the books well. So, you know, that's it for my aunt's books in this break front. This china cabinet or break front was in the house that I grew up at originally. It was my grandmother's. And now I'm using it to store these books. Anyway, so I'll talk to you later, and thanks for listening. If you've 24 minutes, oh my goodness, almost 25, I gotta go. All right, bye.